She sat across from me at our kitchen table like it was a negotiation, not an argument, not even a conversation, a quiet, sterilized transaction. The steam rising from her coffee blurred her face just enough that I almost missed the shift in her tone. "We need to reset how money works between us," she said. Calm. Rehearsed. Not. "Can we talk?" Not. "Are we okay?" Just, reset. I nodded slowly, but inside, something cold settled behind my ribs. A click, like a door locking behind me. She called it financial clarity. I heard alarm bells. We'd been through tight times before, years when every dollar had to report for duty. But this wasn't that. This was language she hadn't used before. Buzzwords that sounded borrowed. Coached. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I need to feel more independent," she said. "More control over what I earn, what I spend. I think it's healthy for us." Healthy. I'd heard that one before, too. People always said it before they left something behind. Smoking, a bad job, or a person they no longer wanted. I didn't argue. I didn't ask who had taught her that phrase or where this sudden clarity had come from. Instead, I listened, watched. And the whole time, behind my nodding, I was already building a firewall. Over the next few days, I played the part. Supportive, neutral, distant, but not noticeably so. If she was changing the rules, I had to learn the new language fast. I pulled up our financial accounts the next night, quietly, with a glass of scotch and my laptop balanced on the arm of the couch. Every password still worked. Every account still had our names on it. For now. I downloaded statements, made copies, separated our joint history into what she'd built and what I had funded. And then I started moving, not money, not yet, but control. 2 clicks to remove her name from my old business account. Another to reroute the auto transfers to a new institution she didn't know existed. I didn't close anything. Not yet. That would tip my hand. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. Because when someone uses a phrase like, "reset how money works between us," what they're really saying is, "I've already made a decision. I'm just laying the foundation." So I laid mine. And she didn't notice. Not at first. She still kissed me goodnight. Still left the lights on when she went out, like she expected to return to something warm. Still played the playlist we made together when we remodeled the kitchen, like echoes of our past could cover the fact that our present was being hollowed out in real time. The next week, she started referring to the house as my space, instead of our home. I said nothing. Because silence is cheaper than war, and buys you more time. Time I intended to use. It started with a new debit card, gold-trimmed minimalist. She flashed it like a business card when we were out with friends, casually dropping that she'd opened her own account. Said it like a feminist milestone. "I just need to learn financial independence," she said again, and this time I heard the emphasis on learn. As if I were the syllabus she was shedding. I didn't argue. I just made a mental note of the change in pronouns. Her account. Her money. Her life. Apparently, we were downsizing the partnership. Within a week, she stopped contributing to shared bills. No discussion. No real explanation. Her half of the mortgage? "I'll send it soon." The utilities? "Didn't we automate that?" She always had a soft, clever deflection lined up like a doorman at a 5-star hotel. But the part that made my stomach turn wasn't the silence around the bills. It was how she started spending. New clothes arrived in soft, tissue-wrapped deliveries. Handwritten notes taped to the boxes, like the brands were flirting back. Boutique pieces she used to say were overpriced. Now she wore them to run errands. A luxury gym replaced the community center she'd once praised for its grit. She traded her favorite well-worn sneakers for something sleeker, European. I knew because the receipt came to our joint email before she switched it to hers. Nights out multiplied. Sometimes I'd wake up at 1:07 a.m. to the glow of her phone on the nightstand and see her texting someone saved under a vague name like Mila or Denver, always with a dismissive wave if I stirred. "Just checking on a friend." I stopped asking. I just watched. Closely. The travel jar, the one we'd started years ago, filled with loose change and occasional 20s, labeled Europe with us in her handwriting, had quietly been relabeled. Now it read, "Me, myself, and maybe Paris." I saw it by accident, cleaning the top of the bookshelf where it sat collecting dust and promises. The handwriting was still hers, just a little sharper, a little more resolute. The shift was both invisible and undeniable. If you blinked you could miss it. But if you looked too long, it cracked your chest open. She still kissed my cheek in the mornings, still asked if I needed anything when she ran errands, but the warmth behind it was automated now, like a system left running long after the user had logged out. And yet, she hadn't left. That was the part that kept me up most nights, not the betrayal I suspected, but the performance she maintained. Like she was trying to convince herself as much as me that nothing was changing. But everything was, and if she was learning independence, I decided I'd learn something too. I began logging everything. Not out of spite, but necessity. A spreadsheet hidden in a folder 3 levels deep on a cloud drive she didn't know existed. Every withdrawal, every unusual purchase, every recurring transfer. A name popped up, B. Hunter, on multiple transfers from her new account. She never mentioned A.B. Hunter. Not once. Not as a client. Not as a friend. And just like that, the shadows on the wall started to form a shape. She was leaving. She just hadn't walked out the door yet. But me? I'd already started changing the locks. I stopped reacting and started recording. That was the shift. I moved from instinct to strategy, from wondering why to calculating how much. I knew enough not to confront her, not yet. People lie reflexively when cornered, but numbers don't. And the numbers were starting to sing. First, I accessed every shared account, personal, household, and one old emergency fund we hadn't touched since the roof repair 3 winters ago. I combed through transactions line by line, past every lunch receipt and Amazon charge, until I found them again. Transfers to B. Hunter. Small ones at first, $40 here, $75 there. But then, $200, $450, $800. Always rounded numbers. That told me it wasn't casual. This wasn't splitting dinner or a shared ride. This was income redirection, quiet siphoning. I traced the timing. The first transfer came 12 days before she asked for the reset. 12 days. I ran the numbers again, this time creating categories. Her new account spending, shared account withdrawals, and silent shifts, like the credit card I never used but which had racked up over $3,200 in the last month. She'd stopped contributing to the bills, but not to the debt. The gym, the clothes, the bar tabs with friends I'd never met. All charged to a card still under both our names. The gall of it was almost impressive. She acted like the game hadn't changed, like the scoreboard didn't matter, because she was the only one keeping score. But I wasn't watching her anymore. I was watching the numbers, and the numbers were loud. I pulled her credit report, legally accessible through our joint financial obligations, and found 2 recent applications for personal lines of credit, denied both times. One cited insufficient verifiable income, the other flagged unstable debt-to-income ratio. She wasn't building independence. She was building a float, one she expected me to fund quietly while she paddled towards some imagined freedom. That was the week I moved my business assets. Nothing dramatic. Just segmented accounts into an LLC I'd been meaning to finalize. I rerouted incoming payments, separated holding accounts, called my accountant, and made it all look like tax season prep. Then I closed our joint lines of credit, carefully, without alerting her. I removed her as an authorized user, froze new charges, flagged irregular activity, and I watched. She didn't notice right away. She still swiped cards like they had infinite ceilings, still wore her new persona like silk, carefully styled, deliberately effortless. But I saw the cracks. Her posture tightened during breakfast, phone in hand, scrolling with a frown she quickly masked. A missed payment alert, probably. Or a transaction declined. She said nothing. That night, she offered to cook dinner. She made our old favorite, seared salmon with that overpriced lemon glaze we always joked about. She opened a bottle of wine, lit a candle, played jazz. It was a perfect evening. Except I knew what it was, a lull before a pivot. A gesture to throw off the scent. A subtle manipulation. She thought I was asleep. But around midnight she was back at her laptop, headphones in, clicking between windows. I stood just out of view in the hallway, watching her silhouette flicker in the screen's glow. I didn't need to see the screen. Her body language told me enough. She was researching. Something financial. Something urgent. She wasn't afraid yet. But she would be. Because while she was out there rehearsing her next move, I'd already built a map of hers. Every transaction. Every transfer. Every casual lie she told me when she thought I wasn't watching. And the scariest part for her? I still hadn't said a word. She moved through the world like she was already free. Hair glossier, phone always in hand, makeup sharper in a way that didn't feel accidental. She started wearing perfume again, the one she used to save for special dinners. Now she wore it on Tuesdays to run errands. Her life became curated, aesthetic, expensive. I watched her Instagram from a burner account. She didn't know I'd made it. Didn't know I saw the mirror selfies in the upscale locker room of a gym I'd never stepped foot in, captioned with vague affirmations. Elevating myself daily. Soft life, hard boundaries. And once. Some exits are private victories. She thought she was writing poetry. What she was doing was branding her departure. The funny part? The bills stopped getting paid. I watched the water company send a second notice. The electric bill, too. She'd removed autopay and never bothered to re-enable it. Probably assumed I would, like I always had. She spent like she was funding her future. But her credit was bleeding. Fast. She smiled more than she used to, but it never reached her eyes. She moved like someone holding in a secret. Shoulders tense, jokes a half-second late, eyes flickering to her phone whenever it buzzed. Always a small, fake laugh before she excused herself to take the call in another room. Let her have it. Let her play herself. I watched in silence as she began dipping into her credit. Slowly, then desperately. Her charges got riskier. More things delivered. More services subscribed. All without thought to who would catch the debt when the rope snapped. I didn't stop her. I shifted my holdings instead, quietly, methodically. My personal savings, emergency accounts, and business reserves all routed into a trust under a shell LLC. Fully legal, fully separate, untouchable. She wouldn't know how to trace it if she tried. The joint account she thought still had our money? It was a simulation. I kept just enough in there to keep the illusion alive. Just enough to preserve her confidence, because the moment she panicked, the game would change. She'd get sloppy. She might even cry. But right now, she still thought she was winning. One night, she came home late, floating on something that wasn't wine but definitely wasn't peace either. She dropped her bag by the door like she used to, shoes kicked off in a practice arc, and exhaled like she just left a stage. I didn't get up, just sat in the den reading, letting her see the faint glow of the lamp. She came over, kissed me on the temple like always, and said, "I've missed us." The act was almost impressive, but the bag she dropped opened just enough for me to see the receipt, one from a hotel across town, itemized for a suite and minibar charges. The timestamp was 37 minutes before she walked through our door. I didn't blink. I just smiled without looking up from my book and said, "Miss you too," because it was already over. She just hadn't realized the stage she was performing on had no audience left, and the curtain was about to fall. She thought she was building an exit ramp, slow, graceful, quietly paved with empowerment and late-night mantras. In truth, she was shoveling dirt into her own foundation, blind, smiling, and fueled by borrowed optimism. The thing about illusions is they don't survive friction. Hers started to burn the moment I cut the funding. She didn't notice the first shift. The joint credit card closed, quietly, months ahead of schedule. I'd prepaid the balance and sent a termination request under her name with full documentation. I'd done my homework, knew exactly how to make it seem like she'd initiated the change. She never followed through on paperwork anyway. 2 weeks later, she called the bank. "Something's wrong with my card," she said, pacing the living room, voice thin with performative calm. I didn't look up from my laptop. "Probably fraud," I said. She nodded absently, thumb flicking across her screen. Her silence was permission, and I took it. The next fault line opened with her backup checking account, the one she thought was hers alone. It was hers, but the deposits funding it had never been hers to begin with. Every auto-transfer she'd arranged from our joint savings had been rerouted weeks ago, cleanly, legally, with a buffer amount left in just to keep the illusion stable. But the faucet? Bone dry now. I'd also changed the secondary verification number on the joint savings, which meant her login attempts triggered a lockout the moment she failed to answer a security prompt she didn't even know had been changed. She texted me from the other room. "Did you update something with the bank? My login's acting weird." I stared at the message for 3 minutes before replying. "Nope. Might be a system thing." Let her believe it was technical. I wanted the confusion to stew, to curl inside her like doubt. Because panic doesn't arrive with a bang. It arrives with small, accumulating inconsistencies. Missing funds, frozen accounts. She didn't expect. She hadn't noticed yet that her personal credit card, her ACE, had been quietly flagged by the issuer for suspicious activity. Not because of a random charge, but because she'd linked it to our shared billing address. And when I severed that account from our utilities, it triggered an alert cascade on any associated cards. Her card was active, just increasingly unreliable. She still hadn't made the connection. The final blow came softly. The buffer she believed she had, the exit cushion, the parachute, the escape fund, was a fiction built on assumptions. The money she thought would catch her was already gone, reallocated under a legal structure she couldn't access, and wouldn't even know existed unless I handed her the blueprint. And I wouldn't. Because she'd planned for a confrontation, an argument, a dramatic fallout she could spin into victimhood. What she hadn't planned for was silence. What she hadn't considered was that I would never raise my voice, never slam a door, never demand an explanation. She thought she was 2 steps ahead. She never realized she was playing without a board. The cracks finally reached her voice one morning over coffee. She was dressed sharp, hair styled, nails manicured, but the edges around her eyes had frayed. Sleep debt, I guessed, or the weight of secrets folding in. "I think something's off with our accounts," she said, sipping carefully, gauging my face. I shrugged, casual. "You should call the bank. Maybe someone's been spending too much." Her smile faltered for half a second before snapping back. Polished, controlled. But I saw the tremor. Her plan was built on the assumption that I'd keep footing the future while she quietly constructed her exit. She didn't know the future had already been repossessed. She just hadn't gotten the final balance yet. The unraveling didn't come with screams or slammed doors. It came with a simple question she asked one Thursday morning, barefoot in silk pajamas, standing at the kitchen island like it was just another normal day in a life she no longer belonged to. "What's going on with the accounts?" She tried to keep her tone even, casual, but her fingers were wrapped too tightly around her coffee mug. Her nails, usually perfect, had small chips at the edges. Stress had started to show in the margins. I didn't answer right away. Just closed my laptop, stood, and left the room. Let the silence thicken. Let her sit in it. When I returned, I placed a manila envelope in front of her. Thin. Precise. Inside, a printed summary of all shared financial activity over the last 45 days. Every withdrawal she made. Every payment missed. Every account closed, rerouted, or flagged. And on the last page, a screenshot of her checking account, the one she had opened with so much confidence. Available balance, $4.17. She didn't touch the papers. Just stared at them. Blinked. Twice. "Is this some kind of joke?" she said finally, voice brittle. "No," I said. "It's clarity. You wanted independence. This is what it costs." She opened her mouth, closed it, looked down at the envelope, then up at me like she was searching for a script she'd rehearsed, one that didn't work anymore. I was going to move things around. "Rebalance a little," she said. "Sure," I said softly. "After you finish draining every resource you could find." Her face twisted, not into guilt, into offense, as if I'd violated some unspoken rule of quiet suffering. Like my refusal to keep funding her fiction was a bigger betrayal than her deception. She stepped back. "You're punishing me." "No," I said. "I'm just no longer subsidizing the lie." There was a long silence. Then the question I'd been waiting for, the one she never thought she'd have to ask. "What happens now?" I slid the folder across the counter, tapped it once. "Whatever you can afford." It landed harder than a scream. Because she had built her new life on 2 foundations, the illusion of autonomy and the expectation that I would stay predictable, steady, passive. She never once considered that I could step out of the script, rewrite the scene, and leave her standing on a stage without lights, cues, or applause. She picked up the folder with shaking hands, flipped through the pages, and stopped somewhere in the middle. Her lips parted. I saw the moment she spotted the line item, the joint card she'd maxed out, closed. The backup savings, drained, consolidated into a trust. "I trusted you," she said, not looking up. That nearly made me laugh. "You trusted me to stay blind," I said. "There's a difference." She didn't cry. She didn't rage. And that's what made it feel final. She was used to performing, and now the show was over. The audience gone. I left her standing there and walked out to the back porch. The wind was shifting, cool for spring. I watched the trees move, listened to the house settle. In the distance, her voice came through the screen door, low and frantic, on the phone, probably with the bank, or with whoever Hunter really was. Didn't matter, because she wasn't the one holding the pen anymore. I was, and she was going to feel every line I'd already written. The first letter arrived 10 days after she moved out, forwarded from our old address to her new apartment, the one with minimalist furniture and an overpriced view of a city she never really understood. The envelope was plain, official. IRS logo stamped in black like a judgment. I wasn't there when she opened it, but I imagined the moment well. Her on the white couch she posted about on social media. Legs tucked under her, holding her tea just the way influencers do, until her hands stilled. Inside the envelope, a notice of audit. Apparently, her sudden independence didn't include good bookkeeping. She'd underreported income on her freelance returns, claimed deductions she no longer had rights to, things tied to our joint residence, business expenses she used to manage under my structure. She tried to keep writing me into her narrative without realizing I'd already deleted myself from the story. And worse, so much worse, was the flagged business application. She'd used my personal information, details she never had permission to use. It had happened months before the reset conversation. A small detail she thought I'd never notice. An application filed online at 1:14 a.m. for a business loan she never qualified for. She probably told herself it was just a placeholder, that she'd fix it later. But the system caught it. A mismatch triggered an automated fraud review. Delayed. Quiet. Lethal. I never had to report her. I just didn't protect her. I let the machinery of her own decisions run their course, and it did, straight into a wall. 3 weeks after that, her accounts were frozen. Personal and professional. She called mutual friends in a panic, some of whom still thought she was the victim. She told them I was spiteful, that I had ruined her credit. They didn't know the truth. She'd ruined her own credibility first. The business loan was recalled. A red flag now followed her name through every financial institution she touched. Late fees piled up. Collection notices mounted. Her curated life began to decay in slow, brutal increments. I heard she applied for a new apartment, somewhere smaller, further out. She tried to look calm in the interview, tried to smile and talk about stability. But the application was denied. Credit score, severely damaged. No cosigner. No income she could prove. No fallback plan she hadn't already spent. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer. Quiet office. Leather chairs. Final documents signed. The divorce wasn't messy. It was precise. She contested nothing. By then, she couldn't afford to. I kept the house, the business, and my name. She got exactly what she asked for, independence. And I got clarity. Not the kind she once marketed, but the real kind, earned through silence, calculation, and the long, slow process of watching someone you once loved turn into someone else entirely. I wasn't healed. Not fully. Some nights, I still walked past the empty side of the closet and felt a shadow of something old. But I wasn't broken either. I was clean. And finally, alone, on my terms.